It's the beginning of March. We're into the second week of March. We've already had 20-degree weather. We've already had two snowstorms. We're just coming out of the last one. And the biggest question we're seeing from people who are looking at our real estate market is, do we believe that our real estate market is going to crash? Do we believe that our real estate market is going to decline? And part of that is because there's a lot of news nationally about declining prices and declining values. What's your take on it? Is the Calgary real estate market on the verge of collapse?
I think ever since after COVID, that's what some people are waiting for, because it was a seller's market for about 3-4 years. With the market balancing, we have buyers thinking that now is, they're going to keep waiting because the market's going to crash. But there's no indication at all that we're seeing in the economy and in the market, in the housing market, that there's going to be a crash. The mortgage rates are still holding, so I think that's a good sign. Bank of Canada, they're not panicking and dropping rates, right, to stimulate the economy. So I think for my buyers, they're just waiting for the inventory to come on the market, because now there's more choices for them, and so they're not in a huge rush to make a purchase. So, and then on the listing side, we do have, an abundance of apartment condos on the market right now. So it is taking a little bit longer than 30 days to sell your condo. But I mean, you and I have seen it when we list a detached home really well, it sells over the weekend, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been talking to with people who are looking at selling a house with us potentially, is that we have seen on our own team, but also in the market as a whole, that when a well-positioned home and a well-presented home comes on the MLS on a Wednesday or Thursday, they've received a full price offer by Saturday or Sunday. The homes, it's not necessarily the nicest home, but it's the homes that are best positioned on the market. The price is good. It reflects the actual condition and location and value of the home. And then it's presented to the market incredibly well, right? Whether it's social media marketing or, a great video or anything like that, however it hits the market, when the market sees it and recognizes the value and buyers recognize that value, they are making offers very quickly, right? But as you pointed out, we have seen condo prices are falling a little bit more than anybody else right now in Calgary, because of the increased inventory, and also because of the increased rental properties that are on the market, the purpose-built rentals that came out in the last 18 months or so. But one thing I saw this morning, getting a national rent report, was that Calgary is the only major city in Calgary where rents actually increased year over year, from February to February. It was only 0.1%. But it's better than Toronto, Vancouver, which are looking at year over year declines of around 10%, right? And so that also speaks to the strength of our market relative to other cities and other cities in Canada, because condo prices are softening a little bit. We do have a really high inventory as investors have kind of pulled out of the condo market, but overall, our rental market is still strong enough to justify some investment in those properties as well. But again, that's nothing compared to detached homes as well, right? Like the average detached price in Calgary is still over $730,000. It's still looking really solid, right? And semi-detached homes they're almost $685,000 of value right now. Looking at the February data, and so even though our overall inventory is up, our actual inventory for single family homes is still quite low compared to maybe attached homes and to condos. So that's part of the segmentation that home buyers and sellers in Calgary need to understand, is that what's happening in the market very much depends on what kind of home you're selling or what kind of home you're buying. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned mortgage rates, right? The mortgage rates are pretty steady, just under 4%, and the Bank of Canada is not doing much. Let's talk about that. How does that affect the real estate market when buyers see kind of steady interest rates?
I think for my buyers, it kind of gives them that confidence that it's not volatile, right? The interest rates, it's not volatile. And variable rates are popular again, because for the longest time, it was variable rates that was more than fixed rates. So now that variable rates are not as volatile, they're not going up and down continuously, I think that should give buyers a little more confidence in going with the variable rate. I know that for a lot of my clients, what I've been seeing is that it's a great time for first-time home buyers to get into the market right now, actually, because if they're getting into a condo or a townhouse, now's the time to buy those because the prices have softened in that sector.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That, we do have some softening in those really entry types of properties. I'm going to throw a counterpoint to you on the mortgage rates, because one of the things that I think we're seeing also on mortgage rates as they've stabilized at relatively normal values, historically just being under 4%, is that I think a lot of buyers, they don't feel the pressure to act right now. They feel like they've got time to make a decision. They feel like they've got time to look at multiple properties, and they also feel like they've got time to make that decision because they know that their variable rate is very likely not going up in the next little while. And they also know that that fixed rates, even though maybe a fixed rate's a little bit higher than a variable rate, it's still not gonna stop them from making an offer if they decide to lock in on that value. What do you think about that?
Completely agree. Think because we're in that balanced market, there's no urgency for a lot of buyers right now. And then because of the influx of properties on the market, they do have the luxury of looking and not having to choose or make an offer on the first place if they see. So that definitely helps the buyer to make or have time to make that decision instead of making the decision like in 20 minutes.
Yeah, and they get to have conditions on their offers, right? It's okay to have a home inspection condition. It's okay to have a financing condition. We're also seeing the return of the sale of buyer's property condition. We know that was pretty scarce for a few years, right? And so, buyers, it's not necessarily a buyer's market, but that balance really allows buyers to include terms and conditions that protect them a little bit more. And it brings a sense of stability and normality back to our market as well. You mentioned earlier, I think we both mentioned earlier, the importance of pricing for sellers. But let's talk about buyers. What do buyers need to do the most in order to prepare to make a purchase in a balanced market? What are the kinds of things that you would expect from, or you would encourage your buyers to do as they get ready to look at homes?
Get a pre-approved from a lender.
It's still that, right? It's still that pre-approval.
Yeah. Because you don't want to start shopping and then fall in love with something that you can't afford. So and it's soul crushing because then that property will be the one that you compare to everything that you see that's not in your price point. And and it just creates a less stress for the buyer, right? To know that they're looking in that price point, to know that it's not going to fall through financing, and then it gives them that confidence to go and make that offer and just have the confidence of knowing that it's going to go through. That's
actually a really good point. I'd also add that it also gives a sense of security to the seller, right? When you write an offer and you can include maybe a pre-approval letter or some evidence that your pre-approval is firm, right? That it only relies on perhaps an evaluation of the property or an assessment of the property value. That provides some security to the seller because, maybe they've been waiting for 10 or 15 days to get an offer. Maybe they're starting to get a little bit nervous again because they're comparing the current situation to the seller's market of the past few years. When an offer comes in and a seller sees that you're pre-approved, it makes them feel more secure in following through and negotiating with that offer and accepting that financing condition, right? And it takes the stress off of both sides to know that the financing isn't going to be an issue, right?
Exactly. Right. And then the negotiating becomes a little smoother, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're not worried about dates. We're not worried about all these other things. We can focus on the things that have the most impact on our clients. We can talk about possession days. We can talk about maybe the price a little bit, but ultimately we're not worried about conditions because we can see that the buyer is prepared and they're ready to make that decision. And then the sellers are more comfortable making a decision as well. Okay, I promised I'd have you done in less than 30 minutes. So this has been a good, this has been a good chat and a good talk and a good discussion of our market, the segmentation of our market. And I'll just take this moment to remind people that if they have questions about how the market may affect their plans to buy or sell, if you have questions about your plan, don't hesitate to contact Wong Associates. Our office number is 403-606-8822, and we'll drop some links down below if you want to make a direct contact as well. All right. Thank you, Candice. Always good to chat with you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. I'll see you later.